The Vietnam War was home to many interesting events, from the Tonkin Gulf Resolution and the My Lai massacre. However, the importance of the women in the Vietnam War interested me the most. Being a fan of women's sports and recognizing the aspect they bring to the game, I began wondering what women brought to other occasions, like the Vietnam War. That is when I formulated my question: why were women so important to the Vietnam War effort? Not many would consider the women to be an important aspect to the war, but they did more than they are given credit for. Through my research, I found that women in the Vietnam War impacted soldiers' lives drastically through their role as nurses. 11,000 military women were stationed in Vietnam during conflict. Most of them were volunteers. After finding out how many women volunteered as nurses, I came to the conclusion that their presence in the war was very impactful. Researching the women's main role as a nurse, I came across a short script by Sylvia Holland, a Vietnam nurse, who said that they worked a 12-hour shift and went back to insanity. I cannot imagine working in emergencies. Looking at these pictures, the care the women gave to the men helped to exemplify the genuine appreciation the men had for these women. It's truly unbelievable to see how much these women meant to these men. Nevertheless, the men saw the women as a light at the end of the tunnel, a reason to keep fighting. Sylvia Holland and many other nurses created a peaceful environment for the soldiers. Another Vietnam nurse, Marcia Fort, in a video, Women at Vietnam War, that you're about to see, articulated that other nurses and the soldiers had quite a bond.
I made a lot of good friends there. We were sharing life and death together and crying together, trying to survive together. And those are emotions and experiences that tie you together for life.
Once I learned about their bonds, I went on to find other common characteristics shared by the two, like depression, anxiety, PTSD, and other health problems. This further symbolizes that the women in the war were working their butts off to win just like the men, and that they too had an impact on the war. In addition, these women were part of a bunch who drove trucks down the Ho Chi Minh Trail. Keep in mind, that was a combat job, like driving a truck in Iraq. These women exemplified their bravery, for they showed the men what it was like to step up and fight, continue no matter what. After finding out about the heroic acts of the women, I then researched the reactions of some of the men. It was tough to find, however, I found that men thought women were very tough and that they had a lot of courage. It's crazy to believe that the men considered women to have had an impact on them. It's important for everyone to know soldiers were not only the ones contributing to the war, women stepped up and portrayed their bravery. I then went on to find first-hand experiences of the women at war. Here's a short documentary by Jane McCarthy.
Name, start a chart, then look at the wounds, cut off the uniform. So even before then, they also had to be checked for weapons. Make sure they don't have a grenade or, M16. So clear them of the weapons. A new nurse, you'd come in, you'd start with the head. In other words, I could take care of here, talking to them, starting the record, getting the IVs. The more experienced nurses were down there doing those amputations. So within a month or so, I had worked my way down to be able to take care of this part too. Triage means assessing all the patients and prioritizing. And that was one thing I learned to do in Vietnam. I remember thinking that, boy, if I'm good at anything, I'm good at prioritizing. I got good at it,
Interesting, right? Something not mentioned in the video, but worth noting. McCarthy stated in an interview that she wasn't in favor of the war. She was protesting it. But then she thought about all of her friends and family at war, which led her to conclude her purpose was to go and fight. In addition, I came across a heartfelt poem by Sarah Bloom. She shared the same feelings of McCarthy, feelings of motivation and the need to help out. A short statement made by her: "We heard about you on the radio. We went to Nam Country." This shows the extraordinary effort made by the women. If you want to get a real feel for the importance of women at the war, I recommend reading the rest of her poem, "We Did It All for You." And also, the statements made by these women may not be agreed upon by some. However, I am not a part of that some. Anytime a woman goes to prove their strength and resilience in any act is one that I would follow again and again. These women went to war. They conquered. They gave the men hope and grit. One thing I found compelling was the creation of the National Women's Memorial, located in Washington, D.C. This memorial was established to honor the women who risked their lives to serve. See, my beliefs of the importance of women in the Vietnam War was reiterated through this memorial, that women are just as significant. The statue seen in the picture is 3 women who carry a wounded soldier, exemplifying their roles as nurses and their valuable assistance. This statue helps to portray their heroism, and not only the soldiers were wounded or killed. Another prominent aspect to the statue I found on Mall History is that each nurse is named for virtue. As seen in the picture, charity tends to the soldier, faith prays for him, and hope looks upward for inspiration. Seen in this picture, the men are being welcomed home by their families. What you don't see are women being welcomed home. I find that very aggravating. Later on, I found out women were not welcome, for many don't believe their roles were important or their impacts. Moreover, that is a large factor for creating the Vietnam Women's Memorial. Through weeks of research and prior knowledge, I concluded that the presence of women at the war allowed men to keep fighting, a reason to push on, a reason to win, and a reason to stay alive. Whether one agrees with me or not, women were the complete backbone to the war. Overall, I really enjoyed researching the importance of women at the war. The substantial information I found helped me to reestablish my opinion on women's importance. Moreover, women like Megan Rapinoe and Abby Wambach have been shaping history for years and continue to do so. Whether they are volunteers at wars or exploiting against unequal pay, women continue to stand tall. The song played in the background is Run Through the Jungle by Creedence Clearwater Revival.